Greetings from Father Isidore Clark on the feast of St. Peter and Paul. Today's feast presents us with some puzzles. Two of the greatest saints share a single feast, while lesser saints have a feast day to themselves. In fact, Peter does have another feast of his own, the chair or authority of Peter as leader of the apostles. And we celebrate the conversion of Paul on a special day. But today the Church wants to bring these two very different saints together. We consider their unity so important that we used to celebrate it as a holy day of obligation, and now we celebrate it on a Sunday. And that's unusual for the feast of a saint. Peter and Paul were certainly very different in their backgrounds and characters. Peter was a Galilean fisherman who followed Jesus during his ministry. He heard him teach and saw him perform miracles. Paul was born at Tarsus and never saw Jesus in the flesh. He trained as a Pharisee in Jerusalem and boasted that he was the most zealous in persecuting Christ's followers. But on the road to Damascus, Paul was shown that his religious zeal had been misdirected. The risen Lord appeared to him and showed him that he had been working against God, not for him. Paul realized that what he had condemned and tried to destroy was in fact true. From that conversion insight, he redirected his zeal to preaching salvation through our crucified and risen Lord. Peter had a similar conversion. Before he could strengthen the faith of his brethren, he had to repent from having disowned Christ in his greatest need. After their conversions, both Peter and Paul were filled with a loving zeal for the Lord. Neither allowed past sins to hold them back. Instead, both strove to share the wonderful news of God's love and mercy, which they had personally experienced. Peter preached especially to Jews, Paul to the pagan world. In this, Paul at first received considerable opposition from his fellow Christians and had a public row with Peter. We have written records of their preaching, summarized in the Acts of the Apostles. Peter wrote 2 letters, and Mark's Gospel is thought to be based on Peter's preaching. And we have Paul's wonderful letters, the most profound explanation of our Christian faith. His central theme is that we must place our trust in the power of Christ's love and mercy to save us, rather than in our own feeble efforts. Both saints were totally committed to Christ. They witnessed to him not only by their preaching and writing, but were also prepared to suffer persecution. Both were martyred in Rome. Today we celebrate the feast of 2 of the greatest saints. We're called not simply to admire them, or even to thank God for giving them to the Church, but to follow them in their total commitment to Christ. Like Saints Peter and Paul, we have been called to share our love for Christ with the world.